Today, we're not just reacting to a headline, we're reflecting on history. On February 17th, we lost Reverend Jesse Jackson. And whether you agreed with him, debated him, or grew up only hearing his name in passing, his impact on American politics is undeniable. And for younger viewers, especially, it's important to understand this. There was a time when Reverend Jesse Jackson wasn't a historical reference, he was the moment. Because he didn't just stand near history, he helped shape it. Reverend Jackson rose to national prominence during the civil rights movement as a close associate of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He worked with the Southern Christian Leadership Conference and eventually led Operation Breadbasket. And Breadbasket mattered because it asked a question that still echoes today. What good is legal equality without economic power? Even as desegregation laws were passed, Black communities remained economically boxed out. Hiring was limited, few management roles, no corporate contracts. So Reverend Jackson and his team didn't just march, they researched companies operating in Black neighborhoods. They asked how many Black employees they hired and demanded transparency. And if corporations refused to change, boycotts followed. But protest was only step one. They negotiated and secured hiring agreements and opened doors for Black owned businesses. Operation Breadbasket reframed civil rights. It wasn't just about sitting at the counter, it was about owning part of the store. So in 1984 and again in 88, Reverend Jesse Jackson did something many considered unrealistic. He ran for president of the United States. This was decades before America elected its first Black president. National Black political representation was limited. Many observers treated his campaign as symbolic, but it was so much more. In 1984, he won more than 3 million votes in the Democratic primaries. In 88, he won nearly 7 million and carried multiple states and finished second in the Democratic race. Through the Rainbow Coalition, he brought together Black voters and Latino communities, labor workers, and progressive whites, building a multicultural political alliance. Now, he didn't win the nomination, but he changed the math. And long before Barack Obama, Reverend Jesse Jackson proved that a Black candidate could stand at the top of a ticket. He expanded what America believed was possible. Reverend Jackson's influence wasn't confined to domestic politics. In the 80s and 90s, he traveled internationally, negotiating the release of American prisoners in Syria and the hostages in Iraq. When formal diplomacy stalled, he stepped in as a informal envoy. He was also an outspoken critic of apartheid in South Africa, making sure to press for sanctions before it became popular policy. The freedom struggle in the United States was connected to global struggle, he believed. Civil rights, in his view, was never just an American issue, it was human. And perhaps Reverend Jackson's most enduring impact was this: he normalized Black political ambition, encouraged voter registration not as a formality but as leverage. He mentored young leaders, and from marching outside the building to sitting at the table inside, he made it clear that Black voters were not a niche constituency. They were a coalition shaping force. It was structural, about who writes budgets, appoints judges, and shapes policy. Reverend Jackson will be remembered as a bridge between Dr. King's generation and modern Black political power, a bridge between protest and presidential politics, between moral urgency and electoral strategy. You didn't have to agree with him to recognize his influence, because his campaigns changed the imagination of American politics. And his legacy lives on in every Black candidate who dares to run for something once considered unreachable. History will forever remember. Rest in peace, Reverend Jesse Jackson.